This is a situation at the start of June 1915. On the Western Front, the British have finally smashed through the German trenches in Flanders and captured a hex. Now, that's the first territorial movement that's taken place on the front since last autumn. So well done, the British. The French have been continuing their offensive south of the salient here, battering away at the Germans, but they've not been able to break through the trenches at all. And they've taken quite a lot of casualties, which, to be fair, so the British. But as it tends to be in these types of games, well, not games, but in the war, in reality, that once the attack's gone in and counter-attacks have gone back in, etc., etc., you tend to end up with both sides suffering roughly the same. It's bizarre, but that's the way it always seems to turn out on the Western Front. If we look at the rest of the front, it's just static. Yet again, this is a continual movement of decent divisions from the south up to the main battle here. That's just continuing. The cream of the French army is now deployed in Flanders, Artois. And the British army is getting stronger and stronger. But the Germans, even though they're concentrating on the Eastern Front, they are keeping an eye on what's going on in the West. The Italian front is finally activated. It was only in the Allied turn of the 7th of May, so it was just one turn that's taken place. They managed to capture a hex here, and they captured another hex there. Well, there and there, to be quite honest. The very small attacks in comparison to the Western Front and all of those hexes. Well, that one wasn't actually defended, but the other two were lightly defended. The Austrians are going to have a look at the situation. Excuse me, the situation here, and see if it warrants pulling a lot of troops from the Eastern Front. Over to the Eastern Front, the German offensive in East Prussia's stalled, but there's been massive movement, relatively, that is, in Poland. Some of the French trenches on the outskirts of Warsaw were actually captured, but a lot of the movements been caused by a German offensive along here in Galicia, which is based, well, it's not really Galicia, it's actually Poland now, which has actually cut the rail line to Warsaw in the south, but there still is one rail line into Warsaw, which is this one here, but that's actually in danger as well. The Russians aren't going to try and hold on to Warsaw. There's no point. There's a lot of decent defensive terrain behind Warsaw, but it's tempting with those forts just to leave a skeleton force in there, just to stop the Germans from mopping up huge amounts of demoralization points, because Warsaw is one of the few cities that does count against the Russians if they lose these hexes. Situation in Galicia, the Austrians have been pushing continuously, but they're finding it difficult to break the trench lines. They've had a go here, and they've had a couple of goes here and here, over here and here. But the combination, there's a cat, just ignore that. The combination of stubborn Russian defence and trenches and river lines has really held them up. We go over to Serbia. Funnily enough, I had quite a few Serbian units still deployed. Sorry, Austro-Hungarian units still deployed in Serbia, but a lot of these have been withdrawn. If you look at the reinforcement schedule, most of these small mountain brigades were actually withdrawn from the game. So there's only a skeleton force of Austro-Hungarian troops left in Serbia. The Bulgarian army has concentrated along the Greek borders, but Greece is neutral still at this stage. It's unlikely to be activated unless the Bulgarians deliberately declared war. If they do that, they get a massive demoralisation penalty, which is not a good idea. Situation in Gallipoli is stalemated. The Allies are they're not going to hang around here much longer. There's no way you're going to make any progress in Gallipoli due to the entrenchments and the terrible terrain. You might get lucky and take a hex or something, but it could work equally the other way. Even though the Turks haven't got a huge amount of infrastructure and supplies, they'd find it very difficult to launch a sustained offensive against Gallipoli. But they could have a go at it, and they could get lucky and take a hex. If you lost a hex here, that would be the end of it. If we look at the situation in Egypt, along the Suez Canal, it's stalemate and there's been no activity here. Situation in the Caucasus, yet again stalemate, no activity. They just really haven't got supplies. Russia is too busy concentrating in on the Eastern Front, and the Turks really haven't got enough supply to make any dent. They might have a go, but I would say Mesopotamia, which is probably the area where there's likely to be some sort of activity. The British are moving some forces up round Kut and probably look like they're going to go for a little offensive if they can. But yeah, again, they're short on ammunition and they're not short on troops as well.